Today is going to be our first day that we are going to be using a program called Inkscape to do our first laser cutting project. So Inkscape is a program that is on your computer. It is not web-based. It looks like this. Looks like a little mountain with a little bit of ink spilling out of it. So on your desktop, if you can just double-click that, and once it does open, any files or anything that you've created previously in future assignments are going to show up here. You're going to click New Document. Now for today's activity, this is probably going to be, well, it is going to be the most probably frustrating project that you're going to be doing during this unit. And the reason specifically is because unfortunately Inkscape will keep the settings from the previous user. Meaning, what I show you here on my screen might not look exactly like what it looks like on your screen. I will do my very best to talk you through some of those struggles and some of those things that you might be seeing that look different than mine. Ultimately, if you hit a stopping point and you're stuck, please pause the video, ask your neighbor. If your neighbor can't help you out, then go ahead and raise your hand. Since this is going to be a little more technical in the sense of showing you step by step what it is you need to do, some of the things on my screen might not exactly appear where they are on your screen, so it might be a little difficult. What I would like for you to do, like I said, if you get stuck, simply pause the video. It doesn't make any sense to continue playing the video and then you figure it out and then 3 minutes later you're 3 minutes past where you need to be to go back to find where you left off. So let's get started with our first laser cutting project using Inkscape. The first thing that we are going to do is we are actually going to change the dimensions of this project. So we have across the top, these are in millimeters. And in fact, we're going to do inches today. So how we do that is we're going to go to File, we're going to go to Document Properties, and on here we need to change from millimeters to inches in two different places. Make sure you do both. Inches. And we're going to make this document 2 inches by 2 inches. And once I click on the other number, you'll see that it'll resize here and it'll resize here also. Make sure that you change it to inches before you change this number. If you don't, what will end up happening, well, I can just show you here. So let's say we change it, it's still on millimeters, and we hit 2. And then we hit 2. So now it's 2 millimeters. And when we switch it to inches, then it's not even, it's less than 1/10 of an inch. So that's not going to work. Our workspace is way, way, way too tiny. So make sure you change these dimensions first, and then 2 inches by 2 inches. Once we've done that, we can click this X here, and we can go to our workspace. The next thing that I want to do is I actually want to zoom into this space right here. Now this is one thing that's going to be a little annoying about these videos, is that my menu across the side over here, I'm on my computer at my desk. Your menu is going to be across the top. Okay? But the icons are going to be the same. There's one a little bit later that we're going to find that's hidden under here, and we can find that, but I'll show you where that is when we get there. We're going to zoom into this page here. So we have a few options here on the side here that look like little magnifying glasses. And if you're having a hard time seeing the video on your iPad, if you just simply hover over them and just point to them without clicking, we want to find the one that says Zoom Page, which looks like a magnifying glass with a solid rectangle, a solid outlined rectangle. I'm saying that because there's a dashed square, which we will use later. So when we click on that button, that's going to zoom us to the page. This did not increase the size of the page, it just changed the zoom. And we know that because across the top, look at this, we have 2 inches by 2 inches. So this is going to be a small project that we're going to do today. And the reason why I have you do projects that are this small, especially just to start, is because I'm able to put multiple projects on a board that we're going to use and to cut it, to engrave it, to etch it, and that way I'm able to get all of them done as quickly as possible and get them back to you hopefully the next day. So the first thing that we need to do to actually start designing is we're going to create a square. So on the left side here, we have a tool menu. Right now we are on the selector tool, which is going to be very important for you to come back to select and click things later, which makes sense, but I'll show you why that might be a little tricky. I'm going to start with this rectangle tool, and when I click on it and I move my arrow over, it might be hard to see on the video, but I have it's a little crosshair, a little plus sign, and it looks like the box in it is black, filled in black with a blue outline. When I start drawing, mine might look different than yours. So I want you to select this tool and I want you to draw it like this. Okay? Now yours might look different. Yours might be empty with a red outline or a black outline. And this is one of the parts that's a little tricky about teaching this specifically, because these are the settings from the last user. In this case it was me, but at your computer it might not look like this. And that's okay. So what we're going to do now, we need to change over to our selector tool to select this. Now it's already selected, but we're going to get in the habit of doing that. And here's why you need to switch over to the selector tool. And I mentioned just a minute ago about why it might be confusing. Some of you might start just trying to click this, but we're still on the rectangle tool. So every time you try to click, you're actually creating more and more rectangles. That's not what we want. So we need to go to our selector tool. That way we can actually click and select things. So I drew these rectangles. If I want to get rid of them, there's two main ways. I can right click on it with my secondary click, and I can go down to delete. The easier way is to just simply hit the delete or backspace button on your keyboard. So those are all gone. And I want this space. And again, it might look different on yours, so I'm going to help you out here. When I have this selector tool and I choose this shape, on the right side over here I still have a menu that says fill and stroke, and that's what we're going to be working with in order to change the outline and the inside. Let's pretend though you don't even have that. That's going to be super frustrating. So let me close these out, these little side menus. If that is the case, or if you ever need to get back to fill and stroke, if you just right click on any shape and you choose fill and stroke, that menu will pop up. And as we select other tools and other options, we might get more menus that'll show up over here. In fact, we are definitely going to have that happen in this project. So what I would like to do, just to start, and we're going to change the colors because the colors are important. We're going to change them back later, but for now, just as we're learning Inkscape, the inside is called the fill, and the outline is called the stroke. So over here, we have fill. And notice that I have what says RGB. You might have one that says HSV, HSL, CMYK. I would like for you to change it, if it is anything other than RGB, to RGB. And once you have done that, we're going to remove the fill from this page here. I simply do that by clicking on this X. So this is a solid fill or a flat color. This one right here is no fill. So if I click on it, I make that fill go away. No fill inside it. I'm going to now click on the next little tab under this menu that says Stroke Paint. And the stroke, as I already mentioned, is the outline. For now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to drag this all the way to the left. So everything's all the way to the left. So these are all 0. That makes it black. And something else that is super important, and I'll talk about this again shortly, this opacity, which means how much of a show through it is, needs to be at 100%. So it's a solid color. Now, this next step here might also be a little tricky for some of you because it might show up a little bit different, but we're going to go to the circle tool here, the ellipse arc tool. I'm going to click on it, and you notice that my little cursor turns into a little crosshair again with a circle. Now when I draw this, let's see what happens. Okay, it drew a circle. Yours may not draw a circle. It might draw like a piece of pie. It might draw an open circle, like a pie with a piece taken out of it. If either of those happen, before you click off of this, I need you to go up here at the very top and you're going to click this pink circle, which is going to make that a full circle. You can see that there's some options up here next to it. So if somebody used the last one, which was, let's say something like this or something like this, before you click off of it, click on that pink circle, and that should make this a regular circle. Now that circle is actually a little bigger than I want it to be, and I'm going to select it, but again, if I don't go over to my selector tool and I try to click, I'm just going to keep drawing circles or ovals, ellipses. I need to go to my selector tool. I will now delete these because I created those by accident. And when I have this clicked, you can see that what I can do is I can resize it. Let me try that again. Grab the arrow this time. There we go. And I can resize this. Okay? If I hold down the Control button on my keyboard, it's in the bottom keyboard, there's one on each side of the spacebar. If you hold down that Control button while you're making it bigger or smaller, it'll keep it proportional, which is a neat feature. For now, I'm going to put this circle up here. So what we are creating is we're actually going to create a name tag, a book bag tag, a water bottle tag, however you want to use it. Dog tag, animal tag, doesn't matter to me. So eventually we're going to change these colors in order to cut out these shapes. So this is going to be the outside of it, and this is going to be a little bit of a hole that you can put a piece of string through, yarn, a key ring, whatever it is that you decide. It's going to be important that we don't put this all the way up near the top. And the reason is because when I send this to the laser cutter, there is a little bit of, let's call it overburning that happens. So this is actually going to use a laser and it's going to cut through this board. But as it chars it and as it burns it, what it might do is it might kind of creep that burn both directions, and it might actually just cut out this hole at the very top by accident, or make it really, really thin so you can't really hang anything on it. So just for the sake of making it usable, let's put it about right about here. Doesn't have to be perfect. We don't have to worry about that. Just not right up near the edge. Okay, let's play with some text now. So over on the left side over here, we have this letter A. That is indeed called the text tool. And when I click on it, I'm going to just simply, you can draw and drag, but I'm going to simply just click. Just a single click. And I see a blinking cursor there. And you can type in, I'm just going to type in Mr. Hale. M-R space Hale. If you want to type in your name, your pet's name, anyone's name, a nickname, doesn't matter as long as it's school appropriate. I don't really care what you type here. It's your keychain. Once I type in my name, just like the other tools, I'm still on the text tool, so I need to go up to Selector. And I'm going to resize this. And you notice, as I resize this, do you notice that it looks like it opened up? Let's do that again. Okay? And that indeed is because the outline, which is again called the stroke, when I were to zoom this in, or I should say make it smaller, that stroke thickness stays the same. So it's actually so thick that it closes out my shape. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And actually I'm going to move it up here, around there. Now if I were to double click on my font again, because yours doesn't look like this, I'm guessing. If I would like to change it, if I just have my cursor blinking in the middle, I don't need to have it highlighted, and I go up to here. So right now it's under Career New, and I'm going to go down and let's choose a fun one. Let's do Ink Free. There we go. I like that one. Let's say I don't like that one. Simply go back up, pick another one. So I'm still on my text tool since I double clicked. Go to Selector tool. I'm going to resize this again. And I'll make it like that. Let's talk about the stroke style or the thickness. So if you drew these, and let's say your line is very, very thick, or your circle is very thick, or the outline here, the last tab on this is called stroke style. And that's going to be how thick these lines are. So if I were to make this bigger by clicking the plus, you see that's too big. I just want it to be an outline. Okay? 0.01 inches I have found is kind of the sweet spot for me. And if it doesn't look good with 0.01, it's very possible that your document is not set up to be 2 inches by 2 inches, or in future ones it's going to be 3 inches by 3 inches. Once I have my font or my lettering selected, there's another step that we need to do, and the reason is because right now this is a font. Okay, I can edit it, I can change it. So on your computer, you're designing this, you're going to save it, you're going to share it with me. But if the computer that I am cutting from doesn't have that font, it's going to look for that font. And let's say it doesn't have it. It's going to replace that font with a more generic font. It's going to change the sizing of everything, and we don't want to do that. So what we need to do on our selector tool, make sure it's selected, and we're going to go up to this top menu that says Path and Object to Path. And what this does is it actually changes it from a font that we can edit and type and change to, I'm going to double click here, click, click. These are called nodes. So now it becomes a shape that we can change some nodes. We can delete some of these if I want to also. I'm not going to do that, but essentially what you need to know is now this is a shape that my cutter, it doesn't matter whether or not it has that font, it's going to be able to see that as a shape, and it's going to be able to recognize that regardless of whether I have that font on that computer or not. So right now I'm on the node tool. We'll get into the node tool at another point when we start deleting and moving these little dots around, but for today we're not going to need that. Back to selector tool, and you see we're good here. Let's add something that I guess describes you, or something that you like. We're going to add a little picture down here. How we're going to do that, today I don't want you going to Google or any other image site. We will do that in a future project, but for today, for us just to be learning, let's keep it simple. On your Schoology, I have mine open already, there is a site that is called SVG Image Site. I had a few students ask me, like if we were to click on it, maybe actually just what I just showed you right there, if I need to click on my desktop or my Chrome's not down here, this button right here, this minus sign, is called minimize. And what it does is it just simply throws the program that you're using down into the toolbar down here. If I click on it again, it's still open. So if you need to find your Chrome, you can hit minimize. It saves it. Doesn't make it go away, and you can double click on Chrome. So I already have mine open, and I'm going to go to this site here called SVG Image Site. It's going to say it's redirecting me, and this is the site that we're going to be using today. This is the only site that I want you to use for your images. We need to find something that you like. So whether it's baseball, softball, football, band, let's say it's a pet or an animal, whatever it is that you want to search for. You guys know this about me. I'm a little bit of a pinball nerd, and that's okay. So here is the options that I have. Now when you are choosing one, you need to make sure that it says SVG for today. For instance, this one says PNG. I can't use this one today. You want to use one that says SVG. SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphic. And you don't need to necessarily know that. But what's important about that, or why I want you to use an SVG, is because Inkscape actually is going to output, we're going to save our project as an SVG. And what an SVG does is when you resize it, it keeps all of the clean outlines and crispness, if that's a word, of your your image. So if you ever try to drag an image, let's say if we were to use this one, which we're not going to today, and I were to try to resize this and make it bigger or smaller, it might show up to be pixelated. So this SVG here, if I click on that, give me a second. Let's see, let's close this ad, and it pops up here. So it's called Game 2 SVG. So on my program here now, I'm going to import this SVG. And where did it go? It went up here into my downloads. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go to File, Import. And mine's going to look maybe a little bit different for you. On the top here, you can hit Downloads. Here's Downloads here. If you have a home button, I'm not sure if you have a home button on yours. We have downloads here also. So either way, we'll put you in the same spot. Downloads and downloads. And mine's called Game 2. I've done this project a few times, so I've used this as an example to download. When I either single click and hit open or click to double click, it's going to say, hey, do you want to make this editable as an SVG? And I say, yep. And there's my image. Let's pretend, however, that yours came in and it was huge. Okay, let's pretend it was like that. Let me zoom back to the page by clicking here. And let's say that yours showed up like this. That's how it imported into your Inkscape. If I were to, let's say, have something else selected, I'm going to click on this image. And I told you earlier that we were going to come back to this selector, which is called Zoom Selection. So if I have this selected and I click Zoom Selection, it will zoom out to the, well, whatever I have selected. In this case, it's my SVG. I'm going to resize this. I'm going to, again, hold down the Control button. If you want to resize it, be bigger, wider, smaller, it doesn't matter. But as long as you hold the Control button down, it's going to resize it all proportional. I'll put that one right there. Great. Let me resize this a little bit. There we are. Okay, so there's the makings of my tag. There are a few more steps we need to do, and then we're going to wrap up this project. First, let's align everything vertically so it's perfectly centered. And how I do that, let's say that I'm zoomed into my page. Let's go back. Here. I have my selector tool. I'm going to select up the very top above everything and drag so I have everything highlighted. That's how I select everything. Let me show you again in case you missed that. I have my selector tool. I'm going to drag and select everything. Great. Now on mine, this is a menu that I told you was going to kind of be hidden. Yours is at the top. It's towards, I believe, the right side of your toolbar. But you're going to look for an icon that looks like, let me show you here. It looks like this. It's called Align and Distribute. So this icon probably appears here at the top. Mine was hidden on the side. And if I have everything selected, this is my center align button. Click on that. And once I did that, everything now is perfectly centered in my tag. These are other alignments which are not going to make much sense. Oh, Mr. Hale, you just screwed it all up. That doesn't make much sense at all. It's jumping all over the place. That's okay. I should have mentioned this much earlier. This little curly arrow that you have, back arrow, it's an undo button. So let's just undo all that stuff. There it is. Now we're back. We need to change some colors here, and then I'm going to show you how to save it, and then you're going to be done for the day and done with your first laser cutting project. So the colors, as I mentioned, there's 3 colors. There's black, which we have, there's red, and there's blue. This outline, for instance, I have my select tool, I have this outline or this original box that I created with no fill. I need to go back to that fill and stroke menu, which because I have another menu here, it's actually hidden right here. I click on it, fill, stroke, stroke style, again, is the thickness. We don't want to fill, which is correct. In this case, our stroke paint needs to be all the way red, and that number is 255. It absolutely must be 255. It cannot be 254. This also has to be 100%. It can't be 99. So this needs to be all the way up, the opacity, and the color needs to be all the way up. In this case, it's red. I'm going to do the same thing on this circle here. Let's make it all red. Great. And remember, you're using RGB. So if yours says HSL or HSV, change it to RGB. So we have 100%, 255, and 100. The color red on Inkscape or on the laser cutting program is recognized as cutting it out. So this will completely burn through the tag. So we have a square with a circle for our hole that we're going to use our yarn string, whatever, to hang your tag. So that's what red does. I'm going to click on Mr. Hale, and I'm going to make the stroke on this one blue. And what blue does, it's a vector outline, okay? And so what that'll do is it's a vector engrave, a darker burn around the outside, kind of like an accent. And I only want you to do that on fonts. I don't want you to do that on images. So this is going to do a darker burn outline, but let's say I want to fill this in. So let's go to fill, and I don't have a fill right now, so let's choose a flat color fill. And right now it already is black, and that is indeed what color I would like for it to be. So if these are not all the way to the left, make sure they're all the way to the left. Make sure your opacity is all the way up to 100. So it should look like this. If your thickness or the stroke, it looks too thick and it looks a little silly, again, you can go back to stroke style, but here's something that you should know. The program doesn't really care, nor does it see how thick a stroke is. It sees it as a single line. So if I had this block to be super, super thick, the laser cutter is not going to burn a very wide line. It's just going to burn it as one pass. So when you're doing your stroke, just keep in mind that the vector cut and the vector engrave are just simply going to be one pass. In this one right here, I'm going to leave because black means a light burn. So it'll burn, and we're going to use those for more complex images later. So red cuts all the way through, all the way through. Blue is a little bit of a darker burn that we use as an outline on text only. You can do it on images, but I'm not going to do that in this class. And the reason is because if these images are really complex and it sees a whole bunch of outlines that have a whole bunch of spaces in them, then it can make the laser cutter jump out of alignment. And then we have our image. So that's it. And now you need to save it so you can share it with me, so that way I can get it on the laser cutter and hopefully get it back to you tomorrow. Here's how we do that. We go to File, and we go to Save. And I'm going to put this on my desktop. I'm not sure what menu is going to pop up for you originally. There's a couple ways we can do desktop and desktop. And you're going to call this one your name. So I'm going to call it Hale Tag. That's what mine's called. I'm going to put it on my desktop so I know where it's at. Hit Save. Now, if I'm nervous that I don't have this thing saved properly, we don't have to close it just yet. Just minimize it. And now we're going to go back into Schoology. And what you need to do is you need to drop that file in this laser cutting Dropbox right here. You are not doing anything with the exit ticket. This says day 3 exit ticket. It might be different for what class you're in, but you're not going to do anything here. This is a placeholder for me to give you your grade. Don't touch that. That's just more of a placeholder in the grade book. You're going to go laser cutting Dropbox. That's going to bounce you in the drive, and this is the one that I did yesterday. So let me just delete this. Right click, delete, move to trash. Great. Don't put it in the finished projects folder. What in fact I do when I'm done with them and they're all cut and I've given you a grade is I move all of them in this finished project folder. So you're going to simply just dump it right here in the laser cutting Dropbox. If it says 6th grade Dropbox, that's okay. Wherever it is, if you're in 7th or 8th grade, whatever folder I have linked on Schoology, simply throw it in that folder right there and I'll retrieve it. I'm going to go to New, File Upload, and it's right on my desktop. Hail tag right there. Double click or click it and open. And I can see down here that it loads, and once it pops up here, it says me. It is indeed 6:09 a.m. That is going to be your tag. That's all I need for you to do. If you were to look at this, let's say I double click on this and say I want to check to see it. Oh, hey, wait, it doesn't have the blue outline. Or maybe your image is all over the place. Your font's oversized. I don't want you to worry about how this looks in Google Drive. Google Drive cannot always see this file the way that it looks on Inkscape. So when I pull this program, or pull your file, it's going to recognize it as this. So if it doesn't look proper in Google Drive, don't worry about it. All you need to make sure is that your file itself is saved into the Google Drive. And that is it. You have now completed your first laser cutting project. I'll hopefully have these cut for you the next day that you have class. I hope that it was a little enjoyable, and like I said, this day would be the biggest struggle, just navigating and learning the little quirky things about Inkscape that might look a little different than what you saw in the video. So if you found today to be a little bit frustrating, that is understandable, but hopefully in the future it'll get much, much easier.